Safety is often something we take for granted, a quiet confidence that allows us to move through our daily lives without fear. But what happens when that safety is violently shattered in an instant? In the early hours of a summer night in 2021, an ordinary couple returning home to their apartment complex had no idea they were about to face the most terrifying moment of their lives, a moment that would forever change them and send shockwaves through an entire community. Behind the peaceful facade of suburban Duluth, Georgia, four armed men waited in the shadows of a parking lot, ready to commit an act of such brutal violence that it would test the limits of our justice system and challenge our understanding of safety in the places we call home. This is not just a story about a crime. It's about the fragility of security, the trauma of violation, and ultimately, the long path toward justice in a case that would take years to resolve. Our story unfolds in Duluth, Georgia, a suburban community known for its peaceful neighborhoods and sense of security. It's the kind of place where people move to raise families, where neighbors know each other by name, and where violent crime is supposed to be something that happens elsewhere. But on July 21st, 2021, the tranquility of the Falls apartment complex was about to be brutally disrupted in a way that would leave permanent scars on its residents and the wider community. The clock had just struck 2 a.m. when a young couple returned to their vehicles in the apartment complex parking lot. It was a scene so ordinary, so mundane, two cars parked next to each other, a couple saying their good nights before heading home, that it offered no warning of the horror that was about to unfold. In that moment, they were just two people ending their night, unaware that they were being watched, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. As the couple prepared to part ways, four men emerged from the shadows. They weren't just criminals looking for a quick score. They came armed with guns and deadly intent. Three of these men would later be identified: DeQuayne R. Livingston, 21, a tall, slim figure standing over 6 feet; Elijah Neal Kearney, 20, noticeably shorter at just 5 feet 4 inches; and Deshaun Andretti Harris, the youngest at 18. The fourth attacker, whose identity remains shrouded in mystery, was known only to have a prior criminal conviction. What drove these young men to commit such a heinous act? What twisted path had led them to that parking lot on that fateful night? These questions would haunt investigators and the community alike in the days and months to come. But in that moment, as they approached the unsuspecting couple with weapons drawn, their intentions were clear and terrifying. The couple's ordinary night transformed into a nightmare in seconds. The four men confronted them with guns drawn, the immediate threat of violence hanging in the air like a suffocating cloud. What followed was an act of such brutality that it defies easy description. The young woman was sexually assaulted at gunpoint, a violation made even more horrific by the presence of her boyfriend, who was forced to watch helplessly as the attack unfolded. "Blow her brains out." These chilling words from one of the attackers underscored the life-or-death terror of the situation. The threat wasn't just of sexual violence, but of murder, creating a hostage situation where resistance could mean death. In those desperate moments, the young woman endured unimaginable trauma, while her boyfriend experienced the particular agony of witnessing the assault without being able to intervene. Both were victims of a crime designed not just to harm, but to humiliate and devastate. When the attackers finally fled, the couple made their escape on foot, running in different directions as panic and adrenaline took over. Their instinctive separation speaks volumes about the chaos and terror of the moment. Two people connected by a shared trauma, but physically apart in their desperate bid for safety. Despite the shock and horror they had just experienced, they managed to contact law enforcement immediately. Their quick thinking in the aftermath of such trauma would prove crucial in the investigation that followed. The couple's ability to provide detailed descriptions of their attackers, including Livingston's distinctive height and the bright red sweatpants he wore that night, gave investigators vital leads to pursue. Their courage in coming forward immediately, despite the devastating ordeal they had just endured, set in motion the wheels of justice that would eventually lead to the capture and conviction of their attackers. The investigation into this brutal attack exemplifies the power of modern forensic science combined with traditional police work. Investigators from the Gwinnett County Police Department quickly assembled a multifaceted approach to identifying and apprehending the perpetrators. The victims' detailed descriptions provided the first crucial pieces of the puzzle. These eyewitness accounts were soon corroborated by Ring video camera footage collected from the area, offering visual confirmation of the suspect's presence near the scene just before the attack occurred. But it was the scientific evidence that would prove most damning. DNA collected from the rape kit performed on the female victim returned a match to Elijah Neal Kearney, establishing an irrefutable connection between him and the crime. Similarly, latent fingerprints found in the victim's vehicle were matched to Deshaun Andretti Harris, placing him directly at the scene. This convergence of evidence, eyewitness testimony, video surveillance, DNA analysis, and fingerprint identification created an airtight case against the perpetrators. It demonstrated not only the effectiveness of modern investigative techniques, but also the importance of victims reporting crimes immediately when physical evidence can still be collected and preserved. With the evidence mounting, law enforcement moved to apprehend the suspects. While the provided information doesn't detail the specific circumstances of their arrests, the quick identification of the perpetrators through multiple lines of evidence suggests that investigators were able to move swiftly. The arrest of Livingston, Kearney, and Harris removed 3 dangerous individuals from the streets of Duluth. However, questions remained about the 4th suspect, whose identity and current status are not revealed in the available information. For the victims and the community, the arrests represented the first step toward justice, but the legal process was just beginning. The road from arrest to conviction would prove to be a long one, requiring patience and resilience from everyone involved. During this time, the victims would have to relive their trauma through statements, identifications, and eventually court testimony, a process that, while necessary for justice, often compounds the psychological impact of violent crime. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and this case was no exception. After the arrests of Livingston, Kearney, and Harris, the case moved into the court system, where the strength of the evidence would be tested against the rigorous standards of criminal law. The men faced multiple serious felony charges, including rape, aggravated sodomy, and armed robbery. Kearney faced an additional charge of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, reflecting his direct role in the armed threat that had terrorized the victims. Managing Assistant District Attorney Ryan Smith led the prosecution team, working alongside Assistant District Attorneys Selwyn Patterson and Lindsay Scher. Their task was to present the compelling evidence gathered by investigators in a way that would leave no doubt about the defendant's guilt. Investigator Bernard Walls and victims advocate Chelsea Thomas provided crucial support throughout the process, ensuring that the technical aspects of the investigation remained solid and that the victims received the support they needed during the grueling legal proceedings. The 3-year time span between the crime and the verdict reflects the deliberate pace of the criminal justice system, a pace that can feel agonizingly slow for victims seeking closure, but is designed to ensure that every defendant receives due process. During this time, the victims would have had to maintain their resolve, knowing that their traumatic experience would eventually be scrutinized in the public forum of a courtroom. On October 14, 2024, more than 3 years after the attack, the case finally reached its conclusion in court. The jury heard the evidence against Livingston, Kearney, and Harris, the eyewitness accounts, the video footage, the DNA evidence, and the fingerprint analysis. They heard about the trauma inflicted on the victims, the threats made, and the violence perpetrated. The defense would have presented their case as well, but whatever arguments they made ultimately failed to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. The weight of evidence was simply too great to overcome. After deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on all charges for all three defendants. The moment must have been powerful for the victims, a public acknowledgment of the truth of their experience, and the beginning of closure for a chapter in their lives marked by violence and violation. For the defendants, the verdict marked the end of their freedom and the beginning of a reckoning with the consequences of their actions. For the community of Duluth, it represented an affirmation that such violence would not go unpunished. Just 2 weeks later, on October 28, 2024, Livingston, Kearney, and Harris returned to court for sentencing. The swift timeline between verdict and sentencing suggests that the court recognized the gravity of the case and the importance of bringing it to a definitive conclusion. The judge handed down sentences that reflected the severity of the crimes: life in prison for each of the three men. These sentences sent a clear message about the court's view of the case, that the defendants' actions had crossed a line so profound that society required their permanent removal. For the victims, the sentencing represented another step in their journey toward healing. While no punishment could erase what had happened that night in July 2021, the life sentences affirmed that the justice system had heard them and responded with its fullest measure of accountability. The finality of the sentences also meant that the victims would not have to fear the release of their attackers, a consideration that can weigh heavily on survivors of violent crime as they attempt to rebuild their sense of safety and security. Following the sentencing, Gwinnett County District Attorney Patsy Austin Gatson spoke publicly about the case. Her words were unequivocal. This crime was despicable and absolutely could not go unchecked. This strong condemnation from the district attorney reflected not just the legal perspective on the case, but the moral outrage felt by the community. Austin Gatson's statement that the men deserved punishment to the fullest extent of the law, and her expression of satisfaction with the very strict sentence, underscored the prosecutor's commitment to seeking justice for the victims. Perhaps most poignant was Austin Gatson's acknowledgment of the ongoing impact of the crime. Her prayers that the sentencing would provide some solace and aid in the victim's difficult journey toward healing recognized that while legal justice had been served, the personal journey of recovery was far from over. In acknowledging this distinction, Austin Gatson demonstrated an understanding of the limits of the legal system. It can punish wrongdoers, but it cannot heal the wounds they leave behind. While the court case has concluded with the conviction and sentencing of 3 perpetrators, the impact of this crime continues to reverberate through the lives of those involved and the broader community. For the victims, the physical assault ended in July 2021, but the psychological trauma may last a lifetime. District Attorney Austin Gatson described the trauma as unimaginable, a word that acknowledges the depth of suffering that cannot be fully articulated or understood by those who haven't experienced it. The Duluth community, too, bears the scars of this violence. The sense of safety that residents once took for granted has been challenged, particularly for those living in apartment complexes like the Falls. Parents may be more vigilant about their children's whereabouts. Couples may think twice about returning home late at night, and many may have installed additional security measures in response to the attack. Yet there is also resilience in the community's response, a determination not to be defined by this single act of violence, however horrific. The successful investigation and prosecution of the case demonstrates that the systems designed to protect the public can work, even if they cannot prevent every crime. Despite the resolution brought by the convictions and sentences, several questions remain unanswered in this case. Most significantly, what happened to the fourth suspect, the previously convicted individual whose identity is not revealed in the available information? Was this person ever identified or apprehended? Did they cooperate with investigators or remain at large? The absence of information about this fourth perpetrator leaves a gap in the narrative and potentially in the justice served. Questions also remain about the lives and backgrounds of the three convicted men. What led Livingston, Kearney, and Harris, young men in their late teens and early 20s, to commit such a violent crime? Were there warning signs in their past behavior? Had they committed similar offenses before? Understanding these aspects of the case might provide insights that could help prevent similar crimes in the future. But for now, these questions remain unanswered, reminders of the complex and often incomplete nature of criminal justice. In the quiet suburbs of Duluth, Georgia, where families build homes and communities thrive, the shadow of what happened on July 21st, 2021, will linger for years to come. Not as a defining characteristic of this place, but as a solemn reminder that even in spaces we consider safe, violence can intrude without warning, changing lives forever in the span of minutes. The story of the Duluth attack isn't just about the brutality of 4 men or the suffering of 2 victims. It's about how a community responds to acts of violence in its midst. It's about the investigators who pieced together evidence, the prosecutors who built a case, the jurors who delivered a verdict, and the judge who imposed a sentence. It's about a system that, despite its imperfections, worked to deliver justice for a young couple whose lives were forever altered by a chance encounter in a parking lot. For the young woman who survived this brutal assault, and her boyfriend who was forced to witness it, the conclusion of the legal case marks not an ending, but a transition. Justice has been served in the courtroom, but the healing process continues, a private journey that will unfold over months and years. Their courage in facing their attackers, in testifying to their trauma, deserves recognition. They are not just victims, but survivors whose strength helped remove dangerous predators from society. And for the rest of us, their story serves as both a warning and a call to action. A warning that violence can erupt even in the most seemingly secure places, and a call to create communities where such acts become increasingly rare, where victims are believed and supported, and where justice is swift and certain. Because in the end, the true measure of a society is not found in the crimes that occur within it, but in how it responds to those crimes with compassion for the harmed, accountability for the perpetrators, and a collective commitment to creating a world where everyone can feel truly safe. The Duluth attack will remain in the memories of those who lived through it and those who heard about it. But so too will the response, the pursuit of justice, the support for survivors, and the determination that such violence will not define a community, but rather strengthen its resolve to protect its most vulnerable members and to hold accountable those who would shatter the peace we all deserve. Don't forget to subscribe to True Crime Diaries and click on the notification bell to stay updated on our next episode.